Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Greetings and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at Alan Wake 2, one of the most graphically intensive games running on the Steam Deck. Using the new Frame Generation technology, we are going to take a look at various render resolutions and upscaling them to the native resolution of the Steam Deck, as well as using the Frame Generation technology to see if it really is usable or if it maybe makes the game somewhat playable on the Steam Deck, as well as roughly taking a look at the quality of the image and the latency itself to see whether or not the game is really playable. And of course, the frame pacing to see if you're going to be actually enjoying the game or just having to deal with some nasty stutters. So, let's get right into it, shall we? For this video, our main point of focus is going to be running the game on Windows 11, and we're going to focus on three main areas through Saga Story, which is Bright Falls, the forest at sunset, and the forest at night, especially when it's raining. And this game already is very intensive on the Steam Deck and can barely maintain 20 FPS, or maybe mid-20s if you're lucky, especially in the gameplay areas. So we'll see how this really goes. It's going to be an interesting video for sure. And let's see if we can actually make it playable. And at the end of the video, we will also take a look at some settings, to see if we can really make it truly optimized or quote-unquote playable or somewhat playable on the Steam Deck. So let's take a look at the settings. We are in Bright Falls now, and I'm running the game at native 800p with pretty much the lowest settings possible. But I do have global reflections on as well as SSR, or screen space reflections, and it should be an interesting deal to see. And right off the bat, as you can see, it's not very playable. I mean, maybe, me back in my day, I would definitely be able to play a game on 20 FPS because I had like a GT630, which was definitely a card of all times, definitely. Well, I thought it was gaming, okay. But it's an interesting experiment. If you want to, a game that, if you want to look at it, it runs, especially in Windows 11, it doesn't have the bugs that you usually see on SteamOS with this game, which I've noticed missing textures and things failing to load and the game kind of looking just odd in particular. It doesn't really have them here, but yeah. So moving on, we're going to be going to the, turning the resolution down a bit using some FSR, and we're using FSR in quality. And right off the bat, the game is much more kind of responsive, at least the touch, but you can still see there's a lot of stutters and the game's kind of all over the place. And you'll see this trend going forward. So I'm just going to basically explain this here and just show you a few clips of what's really going on so you can decide for yourself. And honestly, me personally, being able to run this game on the Steam Deck, I think it's a big achievement. And if it was possible, I would use Steam Deck at 48 hertz mode and just lock the FPS to 24. And I think the game would actually be playable, because it's not a very high, sort of high-paced game, it does require some, reflexes, especially in the combat moments, but overall, it's mostly just like jogging around and looking for clues and this and that, A pretty interesting game, personally. I really enjoyed this. So here you go, and, going back further down, and, you just see this trend, even if you go down to performance, I think this is where it actually starts becoming more playable, and ultra performance is just somewhere where it just truly, becomes a mess, so to speak, and it becomes like just a pixelated mess, which you'll see in just a second. And basically, that's about it. And hey, I'll let you be the judge of that. This is basically it for running the game without FSR and ultra performance. You can see every time I move my camera, you will see the image breaking up so much, just turning into a bunch of boxes. It's ridiculous. It's crazy, and it's honestly. I guess you can play like this if you really want to. Would I recommend playing like this? Not quite. And now in the forest sunset area, this area has got to be a very intensive area. Like pretty much the most intensive area is the forest. And this is kind of where you start seeing that, yeah, the Steam Deck cannot keep up whatsoever. And you'll be like, yeah, this is not worth it. I mean, native is just out of the question whatsoever. So just to give you a little look here, it's not fun, right? And then we can move on to something like quality. And quality is, well, you know, it makes it surprisingly, at least on the playability side, like when you're actually in the Steam Deck, the video doesn't do it just, it actually feels much better. And that's kind of the whole aspect of it right now, right? Latency wise, the game does not feel that bad, even at 24 FPS. This is just my personal opinion, of course. But don't expect a gaming PC like performance out of the Steam Deck, especially for this game. This game is far too intensive, and the RDNA 2 graphics that are in the Steam Deck just cannot keep up with this game in particular. So moving forward, you know, performance, you know, those settings, they start making some sense. You know, but all in all, you might want to just go to you know, ultra performance at the end, and you'll see that the game is still kind of not playable really. that this is where it becomes like, okay, yeah, I can maybe play this to some extent. And now we are in the forest at nighttime, and this is the most intensive area. You know, it's at nighttime, it's raining. I still have the reflections on because, especially without the global reflections on, it does really destroy the visuals. You can see this is completely not playable. Wow. 11 FPS. I mean, it's an experience, right? But this is a native, you know, let's be real here. No one's going to be playing this at native. Unfortunately, we heavily rely on upscalers now. And now this is back in the quality mode, and the quality mode is, well, it's already like a 40-50% improvement. And then going to performance mode, it is not that big of improvement over quality, surprisingly, believe it or not. So, you know, but in terms of the stuttering, you can see the frame time graph, and there's a lot of stutters. I mean, you're not going to be playing at 15 FPS anyway, but the stutters, yeah, I feel like the game really pushes the SSD as well. This is running off the SSD, by the way. It really pushes the SSD, and it really pushes data being loaded and unloaded, and it really does push the RAM as well, because I have seen it take more than 16 gigs of RAM. We're talking VRAM and RAM combined, you know. Even though you can see the readings up there, but still, as far as I've heard, the 16 gigs in the Steam Deck really does hold it back, especially comparing it to something like ROG Ally. But here you go. That's basically what you are going to see. And then moving forward, it's just not the best of experience, no matter how much you essentially lower the graphics. So yeah, at nighttime, when it's raining, it's a study mess, and it's just, yeah. Can you play it? If you really want to, man, I don't know. If you have absolutely no other way to play this game, then there you go. This kind of works. And here we are with the FG implementation. And we're running at a native resolution here. It says DLAA and DLSS, but this is using FSR upscaling. Same settings all around. I did notice that I actually have VSync on, like last time, but I've noticed VSync helps a little bit with the stuttering on the Steam Deck in general. Otherwise, there's some horizontal screen cutting, which is very distracting. So I tend to keep that on. So already with the native, this is the native resolution. With the native resolution with frame generation, surprisingly, we're running at 30 FPS. Like that is. Now I know these 30 FPS are not the same as the quote unquote raw 30 FPS. Oh, that's a lot of stutters, by the way. Wow. Every time you walk around and there's something that's loading in and you are already GPU limited, it stutters so much. And these are not like the same as real FPS really, because you can tell the difference between them and the other ones. And wow, going to quality. This, by the way, actually feels very playable. And this is not the same latency as 40 FPS on the actual game. But for this game, especially playing on a controller, very, very usable. You can actually play this game. You will have to bear with the stutters, unfortunately. But yeah. And it does feel really nice. It adds a lot of fluidity to the game. Like, don't expect better latency or better this and that. But yeah. And moving to performance, same story, actually better story. Like in this area, in Bright Falls, amazing. Like, wow. When I got my hands on this and I tried it on the Steam Deck, like the day before I was testing this game and I was like, oh man, I really wish I could just get it to play at even like 24 FPS, even 20 FPS, because it was dropping below 20 in so many areas. But like something that's more consistent, because I think frame pacing is very important. And in performance, the story continues on like after balance, at least in this area. Performance and balanced in Bright Falls does not give you a major improvement. I think this will give you some improvement over stutters though. And I'm just quickly going over the settings. As you can see, I'm just like impatient, I guess. I was recording a lot of videos and it took a while, took a long time. And ultra performance, pretty much, similar settings, similar performance, but you'll notice the stutters get better, but there's still a lot. And I assume these are loading stutters because there's a lot of data that needs to be loaded into the VRAM, into the RAM, and it also needs to be like loaded off and out of it. So you're going to have to bear with the stutters, unfortunately. At the end of the video, I do talk about on how to make it a bit better. Not a perfect solution, but it does make it somehow more consistent. And it gets rid of a lot of the micro stuttering to some extent, like I said. But yeah. And, there you have it. That's basically the main thing with frame generation. It's a cool technology. And I think it might actually help us kind of revive the old tech. Well, I guess we're moving on to the next area already. And this is the Forested Sunset. And, right off the bat, we're running at the same native resolution, frame generation enabled, same settings, yada, yada. You get the idea. And it's not that good, if I'm being honest. You can see the movement with my finger and the actual screen time it's so delayed. It's like half a second delay. So at least in native, it's not good. But going to quality, it's already a huge improvement. Like in terms of latency, like already, there's still a lot of latency. I'm not sure if you can really see that on the video, but this is to the point where you can like, yeah, I can move around, I can play, it's good scenery, and I can actually, I'm not sure if I can really shoot with this, because maybe if you really go to, if you have auto aiming and you maybe might want to play this game on easy difficulty. And balanced, again, the story continues. You actually get much better performance. And the performance trends actually, especially in these areas, which is very heavily GPU limited anyway, these resolutions actually give us a lot of benefit. And they also help with the stuttering quite a bit and with the frame pacing quite a bit too as you go lower and lower. And quickly just going over all the settings. Performance, we're getting 40 FPS. As soon as you get 40 FPS, by the way, the input lag, the input latency and stuff is like miles better in my opinion. Below 40, it's doable. Like you'll have to get used to it a bit. I'd say between 30 and 40, it is between 35 and 40, it's like good. Below 35, it gets a bit bad. But even at 30, if you really have to play it in those really intensive areas, 30 is doable. Like you can actually play like that. I personally prefer unbalanced. I think the game looks very nice and balanced, and it actually runs somewhat okay too. Again, you will have to deal with the stutters. That is just the unfortunate reality. This is the Steam Deck, not a gaming PC. So yeah. So now we are in the forest at night, and same settings. You get the idea. I don't know how many times I'm gonna show this, but yeah. So this is where it really starts falling apart, as you saw last time. We were getting 11 FPS right here at the native resolution. Now we're getting 19, but you can see the delay is just wow. It's like a second delay with my finger movement and the game. And so I instantly switched to quality. I was like, no, I don't even wanna like experience this, right? And with the quality, it's already the delay I'm talking is so much better. There's still a lot of stuttering and a lot of frame pacing issues. FSR 3 seems to have that quite a bit compared to DLSS 3, or so I've heard. But personally experiencing this as well, there are definitely frame pacing issues. But this game also stutters a lot, so I'm not really sure if you can just blame it on FSR 3, because this game has a lot of stuttering and frame pacing issues on the Steam Deck particularly. But you can see here, this isn't balanced. Still, it's not like, whoa, not a big improvement. The rain area is just so much intensive, especially the part I'm looking at right now, that direction I'm looking at is got to be the most intensive direction in this whole forest for some reason. And even on performance, like, the trend goes down and down. Like, you are going to have a hard time playing this particular area, forest, during the rain at a decent FPS. But this is actually somewhat playable, I would say. Apart from the horrendous frame times, don't look at that. All right, just ignore that. Just close your eyes. It can't hurt you. Hopefully, maybe, but yeah. I just hope no one gets nightmares and they see like the frame time graphs in their sleep and they're like, "What's going on, man? Why is it all over the place?" So ultra performance is, if you want to go blind, no, but like jokes aside, the ultra performance, if you really like need somewhat of an okay experience, maybe in terms of fluidity, I guess ultra performance could work in this area in particular. I might even say, hey, yeah, go for ultra performance. At least go for performance in this area if you really want a playable experience, or well, close to playable, because you still go below 30, and as soon as you go below 30, it's kind of a horrendous experience. It's not really the best. But as I said, so for those who really want to play this, they have absolutely no other way to play this. And here I also do some settings. Here I'm using Steam Deck Tools, and I set the GPU to 1600 megahertz. So I lock it to that. And right off the bat, you might notice the frame time graph gets much better. Like much better. Like it's not gonna mitigate all the stuttering. It's not gonna fix that. It's not gonna fix all the problems that you're having. But right off the bat, it's just locking it to 1600 is so much better. Like trust me, I'm talking about the actual feel of like playing this, and I already like went to performance. I did not want to look at ultra performance for a second more, and this is great. This is actually like, wow, I can play like this. This was my ultimate setting, by the way. Just this one setting. If you just switch it, you lock it to 1600 megahertz, you're gonna have a time of your life. And you can also mess with the refresh rate. I was actually playing it at 40 or 45 hertz. And in some areas, it makes a big difference in the fluidity of the game and how it feels. But it's not going to be always the best. But yeah. So there you go. That is pretty much the ending of the video. You have with frame generation and without frame generation, and it is a big difference. Frame generation does not give you the quote-unquote real frames. And they do not feel like native 30 FPS or native 40 FPS, but it does make a huge difference, I would say, in just the playability of the game and just how it feels. Like I'm talking about the fluidity of it, basically, how smooth it feels. But again, it's not gonna improve your latency. It's not gonna be like, okay, I want a competitive 120 hertz experience, for example. You're not gonna get that. I'm talking in general. So frame generation is not like a magic button, but it is kind of like, it's kind of amazing how like it can transform this game from, in my opinion, completely unplayable to, hey, I can sort of deal with this and maybe even play this game. And I would actually like to. By the way, this game has other issues as well. Like for me, it has crashed on the Steam Deck quite a bit. Running at Windows 11, like it just hung up, like, and the sound got stuck and so on and so forth. So you're going to have experience issues, but it's a very decent experience. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Thank you for sticking around. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, what do you think of frame generation in general and about this video? And if you want me to test more games like this. And hey, if you have some game keys, you know, you can let me know. Hey, nah, that's not me, man. Anyways, have a good one and peace out.